Maybe they'll invent lie detectors that actually work on real humans. That'll have big social effects, right?
Mm.
Imagine a presidential candidate who's like, those allegations are false. And to prove them, I will go under a lie detector and say that they're false.
I was just
right?
thinking about the whole justice system and how that'd be overturned. In fact, you could, theoretically walk down the street and be,
It's both terrifying and exciting. One thing that we talk about in this section is like the invention of lie detectors could be really bad. Like it could be that it enables a new form of totalitarianism where the powerful people, the CEOs and the politicians, force the people under them to go under lie detectors and say like, yes, I'm loyal to the dear leader. I would never do anything against the dear leader, right?
And if you're lying, then you're in.
And then if you're lying, you get fired, right? So like there's a ton of like very harmful uses of the lie detector technology. There's also the good uses. And broadly speaking, I would say the good uses are when lie detectors are used on the powerful instead of by the powerful.
What's this? 2040, passing the torch to AIs.
Yeah, great. So here they pause at the top expert AI level. And the reason why they pause is because their safety cases aren't good enough for going beyond that level. So in the sort of regulatory systems that they set up over the course of these years, roughly speaking, the way they would work is when you're making a new AI, and then when you're trying to deploy the AI into something, you have to have some sort of safety case explaining like what your intentions are and like why you think it's going to work the way that you want it to work. And in particular, why the AI is going to like do as it's told, for example, and why nothing super terrible is going to happen, like AI takeover. It's relatively easy to make safety cases like this when your AIs are still not capable of automating everything. But the more powerful they get, the more difficult it is to actually argue that things are going to be fine, because the AIs are just more capable and they can get up to more stuff. And if they're actually untrustworthy, the possible downsides are bigger. So that's why they stop at this level, is that they realize that if they keep going, then they might actually lose control of everything. But at the current level, they're convinced by safety cases that it's fine, but they don't want to go further. So they stop there. And then what happens in 2040 is they've made significant progress scientifically, including on alignment. And they've figured out how to make AIs that are actually aligned in a robust way.
With humans.
With humans.
Yeah.
So they can actually trust those AIs and they can allow them to become much smarter again. So that's why we call the whole thing AI 2040. Because in 2040, they sort of let off the brakes and allow the AIs to become significantly smarter than humans.
I guess, this is a plan and this is a hope.
Yes.
But in reality, this is not what you think probabilistically if you had to.
That's right. It's important to distinguish like, this is what we recommend, this is what we want to happen, from like, this is what we actually think will happen by default. Now, we do think it's possible for this to happen, but that will require a lot of people to sort of wake up and pay more attention and advocate for something like this to happen. So our main scenario is mostly talking about the policy choices made and the broad scale effects on society. We figured it would also be nice to accompany this with a little mini scenario that describes what it would actually feel like to live through this from an ordinary person's perspective.
Okay.
2029, everyone's yelling at each other. The presidents are negotiating something and they've paused AI, but you still have access to the existing AIs. So it doesn't really feel that different, although it definitely is like something exciting happening. 2031, they've started progress again. The AIs are really smart. More people have lost their jobs. It's like really starting to actually affect things, but I think still most people have their jobs, but their jobs are sort of transformed. So like by 2031, it's like most white collar jobs involve working with AIs to a large extent or managing teams of AIs or collaborating with them somehow.
And
also, there are some things like robo-taxis that are basically just working. Citizens dividend, ideally this would happen sooner. Like in our scenario, they kind of do things at the last minute, So like a lot of these policy things are like happening kind of like just in time. Obviously, we would recommend that you do them sooner and do a better job of them too. But so 2033, you start getting your checks from your dividend.
So you're forecasting that there will be a citizen's check. Your model says it could be around 25,000 at the start per person.
And then it would grow as the economy grows.
But also as like as job displacement takes hold, they're going to need to grow that check and make sure you can.
And that's why it's kind of the last possible moment, because if you waited to implement this until like 2037, then like everyone would have already lost their jobs by the time that happens, right?
People losing their jobs, especially if it happens quickly like we see on this sort of graph here, is going to cause lots of problems in terms of civil unrest, social unrest, purpose, mental health, these kinds of things, theoretically.
Yes.
How do you think about
that? It's going to be rough, and hopefully we can navigate that well. We think that at a high level, people need to have money, and also people need to have power. And I think these are like somewhat different things. It's like, why are jobs important? Well, there's a lot of reasons why jobs are important, but I think the main ones are, well, it's how people get money so they can survive and get the things that they want by buying the things that they want. So if people are going to be losing their jobs, you need some other way of people getting money. And then there's also the power thing, which is that right now people have political power in part due to their economic power. People can threaten to go on strike, for example, or, countries that are ruled by dictators can't just completely, genocide an entire subpopulation, or they can, but like it's costly for them to do so because then they'll have less money because that subpopulation is contributing to their economy and contributing tax revenue and so forth. But if you end up in a world where actually nobody's contributing tax revenue except for the AI companies and the robot companies, then you, the government, are less incentivized to care about what, the common people think. So when people lose their jobs, they're not just threatened with loss of income, they're also threatened with loss of political power.